This is Dr. Swanberg talking to you today about apostrophes. Some people think of them as the little upstairs comma, but they are indeed not commas, they are apostrophes. And unlike commas, which are used to separate things, apostrophes connect things. Apostrophes can be located on your keyboard on the same key as quotation marks, right next to the Enter key. If you hit that key without hitting Shift, you'll have an apostrophe. The lesson below teaches you how and when to use apostrophes correctly. One of the first uses of apostrophes is showing possession. But what exactly does it mean to show possession? Some people explain it as when you own something, but a parent doesn't own her child exactly, and yet it can be her child. My foot doesn't own anything, but it can be grammatically possessive, as in the phrase, my foot's toes. I like to think of it as showing that one thing belongs to the other. My basement doesn't own its windows, I own the basement and the windows. But the basement's windows belong to the basement and not to the living room. Nouns and pronouns can have things that belong to them, so we must know how to use or not use apostrophes to show possession. Possessive pronouns might be the easiest because they never use apostrophes. Let's look at some possessive pronouns. His, hers, ours, yours, theirs, its, mine, and whose are all examples of possessive pronouns. Look how strange it would be to write the word his with an apostrophe. That would actually say hi's. We know that's not right. So that little mistake can remind us that none of the other possessive pronouns use apostrophes either. Singular possessive nouns, on the other hand, do use apostrophes. They use apostrophe and then s at the end. And they always do, even when a word ends in s or when a name ends in s. The examples on the following slide are all correct. It's important to keep in mind that names are nouns too, and they follow all the rules of singular and plural nouns. Let's take a look at these singular possessive nouns. The cat's toy. The word cat, an apostrophe, and an s show that this toy belongs to one cat. My sister's bike. The class's computer lab. Again, this indicates that this computer lab belongs to one class. Even though the word class ends in s, we still provide an apostrophe and an s at the end. John's book shows that the book belongs to one person named John. James is also one person, even though his name ends in s. Just having an s at the end of your name does not make you two people. So this name still follows the rule of singular possessive nouns, and we add apostrophe s to the end of the name James to show that this book belongs to one person named James. The same is true even if it sounds funny when you say it out loud. The mouse's squeak, the goose's wings. Plural possessive nouns are a little bit trickier because there's more than one step to follow to show possession. You first have to check to make sure that you have the word in the plural form and that it needs to be possessive. That would mean that something belongs to more than one thing at a time. In other words, if two sisters share a bicycle. The first thing you need to do to make a plural possessive is make the noun plural. Don't skip this step or you'll make a mistake. 2. Check to see if the plural ends in s. And then there are two choices, for what you do next. Choice number 1, A, if the plural ends in s, just add an apostrophe at the end of the word. Or B, if the plural does not end in s, add apostrophe and s to the end of the plural. Let's take a look at how this works. First, make the following nouns plural. Remember, names are also nouns and follow the same rules of becoming plural that any other noun would. the word cat, sister, class, Kristen, James, one mouse, one goose, one woman, and one person are all singular nouns. Take a minute and pause this video if you need to make those nouns plural. Let's check your work. One cat becomes two cats. One sister becomes two sisters. One class becomes two classes with an ES. One Kristen becomes two Kristens, as in the sentence, I have two Kristens in my class this semester, so I tell them apart by their last names. The same is true with the word James, but it follows the pattern of the word class. In other words, if a noun ends in S, to make it plural, we add ES. So one James in my class becomes I have two Jameses in my class this semester, so I tell them apart by their last names. One mouse becomes two mice. One goose becomes two geese. One woman with an A becomes two women with an E, and one person becomes two people. The next step is to check to see if the plural ends in S or whether it does not end in S. Cats ends in an S. Sisters ends in an S. Classes ends in S. Kristens end in S. And Jameses ends in S. Two mice, two geese, two women, and two people do not end in S even though they're plural. If the plural ends in S, just add an apostrophe to the end of the noun. Two cats' toys. This again indicates that these toys belong to two cats. Two sisters' notebooks. Again, this indicates that the notebooks belong to two sisters. The class's grades are grades that belong to two different classes. Kristen's jeans indicates that there are jeans that belong to two different people named Kristen. Two James's mothers indicates that these are two different Jameses and that the mothers belong to them. Let's see what happens when we look at the ones that don't end in S. If the plural does not end in S, just add apostrophe and S to the end. Two mice's squeaks, two geese's wings, two women's purses, two people's taxes. Again, this indicates that there is more than one mouse in the wall, and the squeaks belong to them. Remember, plurals and verbs do not use apostrophes. You don't need an apostrophe to make something plural, and you don't need an apostrophe to make subjects and verbs agree. Let's take a look at the following mistakes, and be careful now that you're learning about apostrophes not to put them in everywhere you see an S. Two girls run through the obstacle course. This means that you're trying to make the word girl plural, not possessive. In this error, you have made it possessive by mistake. The girl runs through the obstacle course. This is also incorrect. You're trying to make the verb run match with the subject girl or she. She runs through the obstacle course should just have an S with no apostrophe. Neither of these is trying to show that one thing belongs to something else, so neither one should be using an apostrophe here. Look at the following correct sentences. Two sisters walk to school. The two sisters' bikes are broken. The other girl walks to school. Hers is also broken. The second girl's father will fix the bikes. The sister's father also knows how to fix bikes. Which one's which? Let's take a look at the plurals, the verbs, and which ones are possessive. Two sisters walk to school. Sisters does not have an apostrophe because it's simply plural. The two sisters' bikes are broken. Here, the bikes belong to the sisters together, so we've made sisters plural and possessive by adding an apostrophe at the end. The bikes are broken, but nothing belongs to them, so we've just made it plural with no apostrophe. One other girl walks to school. Again, this is just subject-verb agreement. She walks. There's no apostrophe in that word. Hers is also broken. Hers is a possessive pronoun, and remember, possessive pronouns never need apostrophes. The second girl's father will fix the bikes. There's one girl, and her father will fix the bikes, so we have used apostrophe S at the end of this singular noun. The word bikes is plural, but it doesn't own anything in this sentence. The sister's father also knows how to fix bikes. Here, there are two sisters, and the father belongs to them. We make it plural and then possessive by adding an apostrophe. The father also knows how to fix bikes. This knows is also subject-verb agreement and does not need an apostrophe. The bikes are plural and likewise don't need an apostrophe. Apostrophes are also used to form contractions. When we put two words together to form one shorter word, that's called a contraction. The apostrophe marks are where letters have been left out when we form a new word. Some people explain this by saying that the apostrophe marks where the two words meet, but that can be confusing. I think it's much safer to realize that the apostrophe is replacing missing letters. For example, in the words I will becoming I'll, the apostrophe replaces the W and the I that have been removed. In the words she had becoming she'd, the apostrophe replaces the HA that you have used. Try turning these into contractions. She would, I have, do not, does not, she has, we have, you will. Here's a trick. Imagine a sentence that uses the phrase like she would like to go to the concert. And then imagine yourself saying it very quickly, where you would want to run the words together to make the sentence shorter. She would like to go to the concert. How would you say that if you were taking a shortcut? Take a minute and pause the video if you need to while you turn these into contractions. Let's check your work. She would becomes she'd. She'd like to go to the concert. I have. I've got a headache. Do not. Don't trouble me. Does not. She doesn't care. She has. She's got a problem. We have. We've got a problem. You will. You'll be ready soon. Be careful of contractions. Using contractions often leads to mistakes in grammar. If you avoid contractions, you may avoid these mistakes as well. On the next slide are some contractions that cause common grammatical mistakes. Don't. It is easier to check subject-verb agreement with do not and does not than it is to check don't and doesn't. We may hear people say, he don't or she don't, and it might not sound as wrong to us as saying he do not or she do not, which is more recognizably incorrect. If we do not use the phrase don't, then it's easier to check our subject-verb agreement. Its is another one. It apostrophe S is the contraction meaning it is, but it's often confused with the possessive pronoun its, which should not have an apostrophe. Here's a trick. If you only ever say its and it is, you won't have a problem. When you mean the possessive pronoun its, you'll write it without an apostrophe. And when you mean it is, you'll write it is. That way you eliminate it apostrophe s as a possibility and a potential error. There also gets confused a lot with there, T-H-E-R-E, or T-H-E-I-R. T-H-E-I-R is a possessive pronoun. There means they are. If you always write they are instead, you'll make fewer mistakes. In formal writing, we try to avoid using contractions. It sounds less casual and helps us avoid mistakes. So let's practice taking some common contractions apart. Take apart these contractions: don't, won't, let's, can't, she's, it's, I'll, I'm. Pause this recording if you need to while you work. Let's check your work. Don't should be do not. Won't should be will not. Let's should be let us, as in the sentence, let us go to the store. Let's go to the store. She can't, she cannot. She's can be she is, or she has, or she was. You can see that this contraction could create a lot of potential problems if you're trying to make sure your tenses are correct. It's, it is, it has, or it was. Once again, if you're using the contraction, you might be making a mistake with your verb tenses. I'll is I will, and I'm is I am. Knowing when to use apostrophes and when to avoid them requires skills in using plurals, possessives, contractions, spelling, and subject-verb agreement. I don't want to see anyone who's learned about apostrophes putting them in random places just because we've learned about them. It's important to place them deliberately when you're either creating a contraction or showing possession. If you see something with a plural or a subject-verb agreement with an apostrophe in it by mistake, make sure you take that apostrophe out. See if you can correct the errors with plurals, possessives, contractions, and subject-verb agreement in the sentences on the next slide. These sentences were put together from student sentences and student errors on Lawson State Community College papers. Find the errors in the following sentences. All three of my son, teacher, principal told them that their grade was always too low. You can see that Microsoft Word has already underlined one of these as a spelling mistake. That should tip you off. Everybody's opinion are different, but it's important to define a strong person as someone who can manage problems and stress. My teacher were mostly good, but my 9th grade math teacher's style was just rude. Pause the recording if you need to while you look for the errors. Let's see if you found them all. All three of my son, teacher, principals told them that their grade was always too low. Everybody's opinion are different, but it's important to define a strong person as someone who can manage problems and stress. My teacher were mostly good, but my 9th grade math teacher's style was just rude. Some of the things that you're looking for when you're finding errors are cues from other parts of the sentence. We know that son should probably be plural here because it says all three of them. We know that the principals belong to those teachers, so that probably needs to be possessive, and since it looks from the all three like there's more than one teacher, that probably needs to be plural possessive. We have they instead of a possessive pronoun, and grade looks like it might need to be plural. And always, we know, is simply spelled incorrectly. Everybody opinion. The opinion belonged to everybody, so that everybody probably needs to be possessive. The word are indicates that opinion is plural. It is without an apostrophe here, and we should check to see whether we mean a possessive pronoun, meaning something belongs to it, or whether we mean the verb it is. Problems has an apostrophe in it, but there's nothing in this sentence that belongs to a problem, so I think we probably are aiming for a plural here. My teacher were mostly good. Here we have a verb that indicates we're looking at more than one teacher, so we need to make it plural. And again, in the second part of the sentence, we're talking about one teacher, but the style that belongs to them. Let's see if you were able to fix these correctly. All three of my son's teachers. These are both plural possessive. First we made them plural by adding s's, and then we made them possessive by adding apostrophes. Remember, first you make it plural, then you make it possessive. We've changed the pronoun they to their to indicate that it's a possessive pronoun. We've made grades plural and spelled always correctly. We've also matched was to were for our subject-verb agreement. Everybody's opinions are different. We have a singular possessive with an apostrophe s, and we made opinions plural. We also figured out that we did not mean belonging to it, but that we were looking for the verb and noun phrase it is. Someone who can manage problems has become plural instead of singular possessive. My teachers were mostly good. We have made teachers plural. But my 9th grade teacher's style was rude. Here we have indicated that the style belongs to one teacher. These are the kinds of issues that you're likely to see in your own work when you're looking to see whether you need an apostrophe or not. As you can see, you don't always need one, but sometimes you do. When you do, remember, think about whether it's plural, possessive, singular possessive, or plural possessive. Plural possessives are the trickiest. Remember, first make them plural, then make them possessive. Practice makes perfect, and Criterion will always show you when it thinks you have a possessive error. So if it's showing you these, refer to these notes and see if you can fix those errors.